G'day, Noxie here. How you doing? Another GTP, in this case Cadillac lap guide for an upcoming 24-hour event, the Global Endurance Tour Spa 24. The standard caveats: this is a endurance lap, full of fuel. The tyres are warm. Lap time is a 2:03.7, I think, off the top of my head. It is intended to be a repeatable lap for a 24-hour race, not intended to be an all-out fastest possible lap. The car is heavy with fuel, so a 2:03.7. Take the fuel out as a 2:02.7 or something along those lines. The other caveat is this car is set up for the wet, because the Global Endurance Tour Race 24 this week, or next week, is going to have, according to the forecast, wet conditions throughout the night. So, all right, let's go have a look. So, starting the lap of Spa. One thing we'll do too, by the way, we see down on the left-hand side here, we've got the telemetry. So we'll go through the corner at normal pace, and then we'll bring it back and have a look at the corner with the telemetry there so we can see it. So we'll run through that. First thing is the braking point is around about the 100 board. For me, when I look at it, there's a little dip in the road just here, and I use that as my visual reference point. That's what I'm looking at as I drive up the straight. So onto the brakes, you can see about 90% max brake here for me personally, 91. You can get to 100 early phase of this stop, but I prefer to leave a little bit in reserve. And again, that's because it's an endurance lap. We don't want to be on the edge for 24 hours. That just means we're going to crash a number of times. So you can see to the shape of the braking curve comes down in a nice kind of gentle slope. Two reasons for that. First one is because the aero is coming off the car as we get down in speed. And the second one is to ensure that we're not locking our brakes. So braking vent all the way off to the left-hand side. You can see that we've gone from 90% to 60% over here. There is a trail turn-in here, so we're still at 18% braking. Slowly coming off that brake to get the nose turned. And then, although we're not quite at the apex, so these cars like to have, I find, these cars like to have the final bit of their rotation done on throttle, and you can see that we're getting back on throttle at the apex. Here it is at the apex, and then using the throttle to get the remainder of the rotation done as we come out of the corner. The traction control on these cars is not necessarily set to just stop you from spinning the wheels. It's set to allow you to use the throttle to drive, and that's what we're doing here. So you can see with the throttle trace, we've come up to the point where the back wheels are starting to move for me, and then we're controlling that movement with our right foot all the way up until the steering wheel is straight. So you can see, unfortunately I don't have a steering wheel. You can see the steering input here by the white mark. Steering wheel straight, we're at 100%, and then powering out of that corner. So that one's relatively simple. And then a rouge is just flat. You're not flat before the tyres are warm. So lap 5, I would lift all laps up until at least lap 5, just to be safe. So entry is a long way to the left, trying to get as far to the left as possible here. It's a bit less than in a GT3. In a GT3 you stay quite left and come back around, but you've got a bit of aero here which will help you stick the car. Excuse me. So we're going left, we're on the curb, and then our turn in for the next part is just at the end of that curb there. And you can see that the grey line is a bit inside the car, so we turn in a little bit later using the aero. And again, a GT3 car is going to be apexing about here somewhere. We're apexing a little bit later. By the way, in this lap I've done it in 7th gear, but it's actually quicker to go through here in 6th gear. Keep it in 6th. Letting it then drift to try and be as straight as possible over the top. So aiming to have our right hand wheels just kind of on that white line there, around about, and then have a straighter exit as possible. Again, with cold tyres, it's very likely that you'll spin and crash. And during the 24, in the lower splits, anything below top split, you're going to see a lot of cars bin it there when they've got cold tyres. And then letting it drift out to the right, staying off this curb slows you down just a touch, and then we're flat. And then so from here, it's just as straight a line as possible, obviously. Alright, braking point, once the tyres are warm, is probably just before you can brake at the curb. Personally, I like to brake a little bit later than that. So, we'll come back. The braking point, like I said, is for me, I'm doing it slightly before the curb, and again, that's to leave myself 5%, 10%. If I have a lock-up, I've still got some space to catch it. If I was doing a flat-out lap, I'd be braking on the entry to the curb there. You'll see too that the line I'm taking is slightly diagonal so that I can move the car all the way across to the left. My top amount of brake is about 85-90%. Again, that's just leaving myself a little bit of space. You can go to 100% in the early phase with this car. For enduros, so this is a repeatable lap, so I should be able to do this 25 times, come in, get some new tyres and some fuel, do another 25 times. So the braking is not at the absolute threshold, and the braking point is not at the very latest point, because obviously we don't want to have a crash. So same kind of braking curve up high, and then as the speed comes off, as the aero comes off, we're coming down on the brakes, getting out nice and left. We're coming down into 3rd gear. There's a slight amount of trail braking in just to get the front of the car settled. Once it's settled, then we're starting to use, so rolled a little bit and then a little bit of throttle. So in these cars, in the GT3s, you take all the curb here to help it turn, and then you take all the curb up here to help it turn. In this car, I wouldn't suggest that. It makes it a little bit snappy, and I think that's just because these cars are a little bit lower. They've got more downforce. So, different line in the GT3s. You're not putting your wheels over here. You're just putting it to the edge of the coloured curb, not onto the green. And then we're using a bit of throttle again. So just using throttle, you can see that it's the car is changing trajectory on throttle, using about 45%. Once we're on the exit here, we want to stay a little bit to the right if we can. Putting a bit of throttle in to speed it up a touch. And then as we turn left, jumping right off the throttle and entry to bring the car to the left-hand side. Now, I've taken quite a lot of curb on this left-hand side with this car. I think it's probably too much to be safe. It did work on this lap, but I will be looking to have my left-hand wheels here rather than over here in the race. So a lift to get it the front to turn, and also lifting as we go up onto the curb so that we don't upset the car, and then using the throttle again to have the car rotate for us. Putting a little bit of throttle on. Now we want to stay to the left here. We don't want to go all the way out to the right because the next corner is a left-hander. Come out, get the car to settle. We get up to 100% throttle there because we're going in a straight line. Building speed, and then we turn right from the left-hand side here. Get as far left. We're lifting, but we're not coming all the way off the throttle. Getting down to about 50% to get the front of the car to bite, down to 25% there, to get the front of the car to bite, and then we're back on the throttle again. This corner you can bring your wheels over to the right hand side if you wish. It can upset the car, but there's not a lot of difference in terms of pace between going over there and not going over there. And then as soon as the car settles again, we're up to full throttle, letting the car run out to the left here. This doesn't upset the car, so you can go all the way out to the left there. And then we're on full throttle, and away we go. All right, it's coming down to this corner to, I think it's called Malmedy. You can see that the peak of the brake, so the braking point is so just before this curve again, so slightly longer braking than you would in a GT3. In a GT3, you'd hit the brakes at the end of the curve. You can do that in these cars, but it's just for a 24-hour race, it's not worth, I don't think, being right on the edge of braking every single time. I think it's better to just have the braking event nice and under control. You'll notice that it's a lower brake, and the reason for that is because we're going downhill, so it's a lot easier to lock up. So braking, getting down into second gear, and we're rolling into the corner. It's a pretty reasonable trail brake, this one. I'm a little bit wide on it, which is fine, because I'm really concentrating on the exit more than anything else. So using the throttle here now just to manage the attitude of the car. We're in second gear. You can see I've come off the throttle to 0% just to get the nose tucked in a bit more, and then back on it again. And then we're on the throttle. So we're still balancing it, and then we're kind of starting to get on the throttle at the exit. We're trying to keep the car more to the right than the left. Throttle is slowly but surely, throttle percentage is slowly but surely going up, and then we're up to 100% throttle once the car's settled. And the car is pointed off to the right here. We don't go all the way to the left. You can, but it just means that you've got extra distance, and also leaving a little bit of room for if there's a bit of a mishap as well, which is kind of important. Okay. No name here is a really, really tricky corner in these cars. This car in particular. Don't know why. It's just really the Cadillac wants to lose the rear end on this corner, and in the race it's going to be really important to be very, very careful coming through this corner, because this is the place I found in my testing that it really wants to spin. So we've come out of the previous corner, we're at 100% throttle, we're coming across to the right hand side, and we're going to put our wheels just on the curb, and at the same time we're going to come off the power. We're going to stay in third gear, and you can see that there's a tiny brake just to take a little bit of speed off, and then there's a period here where there's just no inputs from your feet. It's just steering the car. So I found that if you trail braked in here, the back end wanted to lose. If you didn't brake at all, the back end would go. And also you can see by the curve of the acceleration that you've got to be really, really careful on the way out too. So rolling in to the apex, and then using just a little bit of throttle to balance the car to be able to get to the apex, and then once we're at the apex, then we start picking up some throttle. Again, the car likes to get a little sideways coming out of here. In this case, I've let it roll nicely out wide, and then away we go. Coming up at full throttle, The braking point is about the same. For me, there's a little like gate thing behind. It's about the 50 board, where you hit the brakes. It's a kind of stab on the brake a little bit, take a little bit of speed off, dropping down to 5th gear, and then there's a little bit of trail braking just to keep the nose interested until you can get to your apex point. Very light trail brake, again, because there's plenty of aero, so the car's going to go where you want it to go anyway. And then with this car, it's understeery through here, and intentionally so, because again, this is one of those places that crashes happen a lot, and because this is a wet setup. And then once you've hit your apex and the car is pointed nicely to the left, then you pick up your throttle. You will see though that it's not just a slam on the throttle, it is a graduated acceleration, and then by the time we're at the exit of the corner, we're at 100%. Go through that again. Little brake, 5th gear, power, and then the aero will keep you where you want to be for the rest of the corner. So we'll just go flat out there. So braking point for Piff Paff. Now I've changed my graphics settings just to help with the streaming. There is a bridge that goes over, and most people, I've got to figure out which setting I changed that took the bridge out, but there's a bridge that goes over here. That bridge can be used as your braking point. If you don't have that bridge, then the braking point is say halfway between the 100 and the 50, and just like all the other corners in this guide, you could brake later. So if you were trying to make a faster lap, then you could brake a little later, but this is intended to be a repeatable endurance lap with lots of fuel on board. All the way out to the left-hand side before braking. It's not a heavy brake. You're not taking a huge amount of speed off. I think we get to 85%. It's not a really heavy brake. And then from the moment you brake, you're already trailing. You're coming down from, which gear are we in? Coming down from 6th gear to 3rd gear. Bringing it down. Trail braking in till, and it's actually, again, you trail brake less in these cars than you do in a GT3. So you get them to the speed, and then you trail brake to get the nose turn. But in a GT3, you trail brake longer than you do in these cars because of the downforce. And also because these cars are driven more on the rear than the front, whereas the GT3s are driven more on the front than the rear. So once it's settled, once you've got your line sorted, then using the throttle to be able to balance the car. I personally it doesn't make a huge amount of difference if you put the wheels over here or if you leave them where I like to just get to the top of the curb there. I know Tommy Patero, for example, he thinks it's better to have your wheels all the way over there or over here. Personally, I like being where that is. I feel like it turns the car a little bit for me, but it's not too risky. So what are we, 30% throttle? So what we're aiming to do here is stay right. And in this corner, you can see there's quite a camber in this part of the road. So you want to stay in this camber. You don't want to go all the way out to the left here. You actually are quicker in the camber than outside the camber. So you can see that, I'm putting some extra throttle on here, keeping it just in the camber. I've actually possibly gone a little bit too far left. And then as soon as we're out of that, here we go, coming out of the corner, got the car settled, and then immediately off throttle, not a brake, but just off throttle, get the front turned, aiming for effectively where the green and the concrete meet as your apex. And as soon as you got the car in, there's 50% throttle to balance it. And then the moment you're at the apex, you're building throttle to get the car to come out and to try and get some pace. You let the car run nice and wide. You can go a lot wider than I've taken it here, and then on full throttle for the next corner. Coming up to whatever this is called, We come across the left hand side, we're up into fourth gear. Our braking point is, let's say, where the yellow and the red changes. So you see that I'm starting to brake here. It's a short brake because you're not taking a huge amount of speed off. And then from here, you're balancing the car. There's a little bit of trail brake. Again, what you're aiming to do is to have as little steering input as possible, just having the car comfortably go where you want it to go. This is another one of those kinds of Spa where you can put the wheels on the right hand side if you wish. You don't have to. It's actually pretty easy getting off track on the inside here. And then, so we've got it turning in, and then once we've got it pointed where we want it, as in apex, we're then using throttle. Here you see there's actually quite a lift up to about 50%. It happens pretty quickly, using throttle to get the car to turn where we want it to go, and then as soon as it is, we're progressively coming onto the throttle to keep the speed up as much as possible. Running it nice and wide here, like there's no real danger out here. You don't want to go on the gravel, but you can touch it without too many problems. Okay, next corner. Okay, so important. When the GTPs had the old tyre model, this was just flat. And you just shoved the throttle down and away you went. GT3s are the same. GT3s, you go in there flat. In this car, with this setup and with these track conditions, it is not flat. You can't. This car will understeer. So what you want to do is you turn in as late as you can. So you can see our left wheels are actually outside the rubber marks here. So you turn in quite late. Still got throttle on as we're turning, and then it's an early lift. So you can see I'm lifting on the way in. Lifting down to 72%. It's not a complete lift. You're not coming all the way off the throttle because that unbalances the car. You come down to about 70, 65, 70% to get it to turn and to get it pointed where you want to get it pointed. Now, if you've got it pointed in the right place and the apex for this corner is quite late, so late turn in, and the apex is all the way over here somewhere. It's not here. It's all the way around here. It's quite a long corner. So we're lifting until we basically get to the apex, but it's not off throttle. And then once we're close to the apex, we're back onto 100% throttle and letting it roll wide. Again, this car is going to understeer here, and it will understeer quite wide. So the whole race is going to need to be quite careful through there. It's very easy to make a mistake and end up on the gravel, and even easier to make a mistake and end up in the wall. And on cold tyres in particular, you're actually going to go through there in fourth gear, and you're going to lift and let it roll almost all the way through until you straight, and then you'll hit the throttle. All right, and then we are, quite simply flat and just taking the shortest possible line from here all the way up through the Blanchimont. Blanchimont is also flat, but we'll just go through it. So you go as wide as you can. These two wheels have to stay inside the white line or you're getting off track. It's an easy flat 7th gear, turn in early. So your apex point is at the start of the curve, not towards the end. Keeping it flat and letting it roll nice and wide, and easy flat once the tyres are warm. Lift before the tyres get warm. So for the first 3 laps or so, you'd be lifting through there, probably doing it in 6th gear. And now we're up to the final part of the lap, the bus stop. I'm using the white line here as my reference marker for these cars. I'm braking on about the white line. I'm not going to 100%, I'm going to about 90%. You can go to 100% in this car, but I'm leaving myself a little bit of room. And you can see by the brake curve, this is actually a longer, harder stop. So normally what happens is it goes up and then it comes back down about there, but here it's staying up fairly high, bleeding off slowly as we go from quite a high speed to a much lower speed, bleeding off slowly down to about 65%, thereabouts. So with no downforce in this car, 65% is a really good slowing down amount with when you're at a higher speed, you can go to 100%, but only for a short period of time. I'm going to about 90-95% and then bringing it off slowly. We're getting up to the turning point. Turning point is fairly wide here. Trail braking in to make sure that we get the car where we want it to be. The line being to clip this curb but not hit the sausage. It doesn't really matter that much in this car. So we've done our turn in. We're aiming to have the car further to the right than the left on the exit here. So you can see that the exit on the apex on this curve again is quite late. It's over here somewhere because we want to stay to the right. And then as soon as we're at that apex, we're using throttle. We're in first gear, by the way. Bring it down to first gear. We're using throttle to rotate the car. And then once it's settled, at least on the right-hand side, you don't want to be on the left-hand side here, at least on the right-hand side of the track, in the middle of the track basically. Once it's settled, we're turning left, and we turn left and we drop throttle all the way off. So turning, you can see the turning events happening. Well, I've still got a bit of throttle on, and that's on purpose, by the way. So turning while there's a bit of throttle on means that the weight of the car doesn't massively shift forward all of a sudden and spin you. So you start turning where you've still got throttle on. When the car is turned, the wheels are turned, then we come off throttle because it's already settled into, the weight has already shifted to the right-hand side of the car. It's not a sudden shift, it's a more gradual shift. So that's why come out of this corner on throttle, turn while you've still got throttle on, and then as you turn in, you're lifting. So that way it's a smoother transition of weight. Remembering the old pretend you're driving a bathtub full of water. If you smash the brakes, the water all goes to the front. If you hit the accelerator, the water all goes to the back. Turn the wheel suddenly and all the water goes from side to side. And if you can visualize that as you're driving, it's a good way to do it. Lifting off. More traditional apex here. Putting our left-hand tyres just next to this sausage curb. And then using throttle. 50% starts to rotate the car. More than that starts to slide the car. And so depending on how your exit's going, you might want to slide it a little bit more. So you adjust with your throttle percentage. This is actually a really nice linear exit. I've got this one right, which is nice. And then you can see that the throttle comes up in a linear way. We're going nice and wide, using the curb, opening the steering up, getting to 100%, and away we go. So there you go. That's a lap of Spa, an endurance lap of Spa, which is a very important thing. So I will now be quiet and we'll go to cockpit view and you can watch the lap from inside. It's important to note that when you're looking at it from the inside, there's no big jumps on the steering wheel, there's no massive lockups, there's no, like, the car's very controlled the whole way through. The idea, what we're trying to get to, is one turn of the wheel, one gentle turn of the wheel, and then bring it back. You can see all our settings down here: brake bias migration, brake migration, etc. You can also see that we've still got 15 laps of fuel on board, so we've only used a third of a tank. I hope you find this helpful. I hope it's useful. Fingers crossed. Let me know in the comments, or let me know on the Discord, whether you found having the telemetry there better or worse than the previous ones that I've done. Final word: that is a repeatable lap. You should be able to do that again and again and again and again, and be within about half a second. And in a 2K split, or a 2.5K split, or even a 3K split, that will be a quick lap. Won't be the fastest lap, but it'll be a quick lap, and it'll be a repeatable lap. And little risk, taking very small risks, not taking big risks. I hope you find that helpful. If you, obviously for my team, good luck. I hope that this is really helping for you guys. Anybody else who happens to be driving a Cadillac at Spa this weekend, I hope that that's really helpful for you guys too. Thanks for watching. See you later.